right, guys, welcome to Tuesday night. I wasn't sure I would make it here tonight, given that my camera wasn't working, but apparently I figured it out. So good deal. Yay me. All right, welcome to Tuesday Night Live. I might have to close a wee bit early tonight. There's just a lot going on in the world. So I'm super happy to be here with you. For those of you that have been living under a rock, littlest Barry has arrived in Tennessee, so that's very exciting news. I can't wait to meet her. So yeah, that's fun. And I'm just here in Berkeley, doing Berkeley things. And right now I am working on a lot of video edits. I just started my course, Keto Unstuck, started on Sunday. And so this is week 1 and I'm getting to know everybody and it's super fun. I'm super happy to be running the program. I walked down to Sprouts today. I also got a coffee while I went there, which I'm still drinking. And then I came home, did some stuff, ate some things, made some things. Now I'm here with you. Super much life. And I'm taking a little easy today, just not stressing, trying not to stress out too much about life and just enjoy. So thanks for joining me today. And I'm here for your questions for anything you want to talk about. Thanks, Teresa. I appreciate it. I, put a little effort in. I did the eyebrows. I've got a little patch. Is it this eyebrow? I think it's this eyebrow. Got a little patch that decided to disappear. I sometimes sleep on my face and I wake up, my eyebrows are like, Wah. Anyway, fun stuff. And I'm noticing that I'm getting a lot more of the silver. It's really increasing the little grays, but I kind of like it. I kind of like going gray. It's all good. Anyway, I can't take a compliment, clearly, Teresa, because then I tell you all the things that are wrong. So it was a really foggy morning, but the sun's out. It's turned into a lovely afternoon here. And I hope everyone's having a great time. Nobody has any questions. Okay, let's see. What should I talk about? I should come prepared with topics, shouldn't I? So I'm just editing my protein video this week. I went up to Tahoe for a few days to see my folks. That was fun. And I'm enjoying all sorts of stuff. So trying to teach my mother about how to get enough protein is one of my main jobs. Dr. Barry talks about powdered butt syndrome, and my parents tell me how brilliant I am all the time, and then they don't follow my brilliant advice. So, that's the way life goes, right? But I'm slowly getting her to eat a sufficient amount of protein. Docs and galleries still making out without air conditioning. Yeah, there's just no hope of getting air conditioning here. It's just not going to happen in this apartment. But I'm doing all right. One of the things about this part of California is because we're the Bay here, we get fog. And so if the temperature goes over 90 for more than a few days, we do get fog. And then it brings the temperature down. It just keeps coming around. So it's never more than a few hot days in a row. Tammy, how am I doing on my journey? Well, that's a great question. I can certainly talk about that. So 2022, I decided to focus on muscle growth rather than any more fat loss. That's not to say that I don't have fat loss goals that might continue in the future. I certainly feel like I could stand to lose a good 15-ish pounds of body fat, but I really, knowing myself, wanted to focus on muscle growth this year, because while we can recomposition and do both things at once, I felt like I would have a better time just stopping and focusing on one thing. That being said, I have done some fat loss sprints during this year so far. So what will often happen is, I'll be in the gym trying to gain more muscle, and I'll notice I feel a little fluffier, like maybe I feel like maybe it's a moving target, how much to eat, right? And I'll be like, I could probably take off 2 or 3 pounds of body fat and bring it back down. So I've done a few shortcuts, not shortcuts, but shortcuts this year. And like, for instance, I noticed, I went away and I was a little less careful for a little bit. And then I noticed I was trending up a little bit. So I kind of changed the trajectory a little bit. So it's not without a few sort of mini adjustments to keep the weight under control. But my main focus is not on cutting these days. But maybe 2023 will be the year of getting ultra lean or just moderately lean. Anyway, Mike asks, what is too high for LDL? Mine is 235. My total is 323. So not a cholesterol expert here. I will say that, the general health guidelines would say that an LDL of 100 is the maximum we want. We'll also say that general health guidelines are built for unhealthy people. What does that mean? Well, I think that in someone with metabolic disease or other problems, having higher LDL is more of a concern, perhaps, because we know that kind of the two things can operate together. We have increased inflammation, we have increased insulin, those things with the high LDL, higher oxidation of LDL, and we need to be careful in those situations. Whereas, and when we look at all the risk factors together, even if your LDL is a little higher, but all your other metabolic markers are lower, that may confer some benefit overall. That being said, no one is exactly sure about all of the little details when taking, it all into account. Some cholesterol research will say even in a healthy body, it still matters that you have good cholesterol control. And other people will say we probably shouldn't pay attention to LDL when we're working within a ketogenic framework. I think the smartest person in the room on this is often Dave Feldman, who's also a good friend of mine, and he's at cholesterolcode.com. So I would suggest going there. Where do I stand on the matter? I'm kind of in the middle. I'm not fully willing to say I don't think LDL matters ever at all. I am also pretty sure that LDL, like I can 100% say, I know LDL in and of itself is not the only thing that matters. And I think the answer is found somewhere in between. And I think there's probably some genetic variation where some people are perfectly healthy with a higher level and some people it needs to be a lower level. It's, I think, a much more complicated and nuanced discussion than almost anyone is actually having. And so I would definitely look at some of the cholesterol. If you go to cholesterolcode.com, there are some like calculations about cardiovascular risk where you take into account not just LDL levels, but also triglyceride to HDL levels and your age and your fasting insulin levels. And you put all those things together, and all of that will help you get maybe a more educated perspective on, is this something that I want to treat or not? Also, there are certain ways that we can mess with our macronutrient intake a bit if we want to adjust. And so I know Dave has seen that when he ups carbohydrates slightly, his LDL comes down. And Dr. Tro did a little study on this one and had some of his patients eat closer to maybe 50 grams of carbohydrates and found that brought their LDL down quite a bit. So there can be some nutrient manipulation that can be beneficial if you're wanting to, say, lower your LDL, but you're not wanting to take a statin. And so you can look at some of those things. So Cholesterol Code is a great place to start. All right. Ducks and Gal, I need to gain muscle. Karen says, where do I start with weights? So 55 plus. Okay. So whatever age you're at, you can start with weights. It's the good news is that when we start with weights, we're new, and there's this thing called newbie gains. So just starting is going to confer benefit. Just doing more than you're doing right now is going to have benefit. So what does that mean? Well, I know it's not weightlifting, but if you're not already walking, then walk. You want to make sure you're getting in a daily 20, 30, 40-minute walk. You can break that up into 2 20-minute walks, but moving your body. That's going to be a huge benefit cardiovascularly and muscularly because, you're weight bearing when you're walking. Then, what else are you going to want to do? Well, you're going to want to tell your muscles you need them. You're going to want to stress them out slightly. So that means you're going to have to lift something. And the good news again, when you're new, lifting something is better than lifting nothing. And so it can be very basic. It can be home workouts, hitting your main muscle groups. So some squats, which will hit your leg muscles and your butt. Some crunches or things like that are going to hit your ab muscles. Lift some things, going to hit your chest, your back, your arms, right? So I can't really go through a whole routine here, but I should get some resources for you. So I'll start talking more about some resources for lifting. But the good news is, if you're starting from zero, then just one workout a week is a huge improvement. 2 is better than 1. 3 is probably better than 2, but 4 isn't necessarily required for anybody new, or maybe 2 is plenty. So it's just a little bit more than yesterday is what really matters. Barbara says, how much homemade yogurt do you think is okay to eat per serving? I know it depends on other carbs. Want to know how much to eat every day. So how much you eat at once is a serving. So I guess, what are we calling a serving? What are we calling an appropriate amount to eat at once? It's going to depend on a lot of things. It's going to depend on what are the actual macronutrients of that yogurt, right? Because to make yogurt, you take dairy products, and those dairy products then get fermented, and you ferment out a lot of the sugar as you're fermenting them. So it's hard for me to know in terms of a homemade yogurt what you're ending up with. It also depends if you started with cream, half and half, high-fat yogurt, high-fat milk. There's the word I'm looking for. Low-fat milk. But I can tell you, like, as an example, when I get yogurt from the store and I know it's macronutrients, then I can calculate. And what I focus most on is, am I getting enough protein in this meal? And am I keeping the carbs in an appropriate dose? So I worry first about protein, second about total calories. Like, I have a different order of operations these days, but we have to look at what we're trying to optimize for. So if it's very important to you to stay in ketosis, yeah, you're absolutely going to have to calculate in how many carbs you're getting out of that. So if it's like, if a serving of let's take, for example, Fage yogurt, which is a Greek yogurt. I know that I might be off by a gram or two. I'm just doing this from memory, but like a serving of that is around 12 or 14 grams of protein, about 5 grams of carbs. The fat will depend on which kind I'm using. And then, I know that I don't eat, if I'm eating a meal, I want to get at least 30 grams of protein, which means I'm going to be eating, 2 servings plus of that, which means I'm getting around 10 grams of carbs from that. And is that appropriate for me? It's appropriate for me because my carb tolerance is higher. If you have a very low carb tolerance, you're going to have to take that into account. And so maybe you don't eat a double amount because a serving is what's listed, is what it's called on the amount. So maybe I'm not doing a big enough serving that I'm getting 30 grams of protein from the yogurt. So if I'm trying to keep my carbs under 5 or 7 or 10 grams a meal, whatever that limit is for you, then I'd say, okay, what can I add to that meal? So maybe I have a bowl of yogurt that is 5 grams of carbs. And then with that, I'm going to have a couple of eggs, right? Or I'm going to add some protein powder to the yogurt to bump up the protein in the yogurt. So there are ways to wrangle it. But essentially, you can kind of think with any nutritional approach, you have a budget. And you have tolerances. And so you're like, okay, I can't spend more than this much on the heating bill, right? And so if your carb tolerance is low, that's going to be your primary driver. For me, protein is my primary driver, getting enough protein in a meal. For most of you, if you're trying to stay in ketosis, you still have to worry about protein. You got it. So it's like you got multiple priorities you got to balance. So hopefully that answered your question. Scott says, do I have a recommendation for how to make a recipe keto? It isn't a common dish, so I'm not sure where to start. It is a cookie called a cruller from Switzerland, a family recipe. So things like cookies, very challenging to make keto and work well. So not off the top of my head is the answer. But you could start by Googling cruller or Kroller. I don't know how to say it right. And keto and see if anything comes up. Baking is definitely more of a science than an art in and of itself, right? Like it's like you gotta it's a very specific chemistry experiment. And getting the chemistry right without wheat flour can be very challenging. Scott says, I know you work on recipes quite a bit. Wasn't sure where to start. I tried last Christmas and failed miserably. All right. Well, I'll make a note. Let me look. German cruller. See what I can come up with. All right. Let's talk to Suzanne. What can help lower morning high glucose? Is 108 to 110 too high for a waking level if I'm eating no more than 20 grams of carbs? So I would say, Susan, you're probably experiencing something called dawn phenomenon. And dawn phenomenon is just the fact that when we are in our wake cycle, cortisol rises, as it should. That's not a problem. Cortisol naturally rises when we're waking up. And as that happens, it's gonna be cause a slight glucose increase. Every human has a small to large amount of this response in the morning. It's just for some of us, it pushes us into a range where we start to call it dawn phenomenon. But we all have dawn phenomenon, but it's noticeably higher. And so dawn phenomenon primarily is not so much about carbs as it is about just natural biochemistry. And it's a stress response. And I don't say stress as in like bad stress, just cortisol is a stress response. Waking up is a stress response, right? I mean, no, waking up elicits a stress response. And so, generally speaking, I think most doctors would say, if you're just going to 108, 110, it's probably not causing any real issue. It might change over time and come back down. They do find eating too late at night can sometimes raise morning glucose. So make sure you're not eating too close to bed. Make sure you're eating an appropriate diet, but sometimes this just takes a while. And again, you're not up in a range that's causing immediate damage. So again, I can guarantee, because I've heard him say it and it says it in our book, that Dr. Berry would say that's probably not something I would worry too much about. By the way, I am not a doctor, though I work with doctors at times, and I sometimes say what they say. I am not a doctor, and please don't take anything I say here or anywhere as medical advice. Make sure you talk to your own medical practitioner about any medical concerns. I'm on the internet. I can't see you. I don't know you. I mean, I know some of you, but I don't know you that way. I'm not your doctor. Don't pretend I am. Okay. Catherine, consistently hungry 2 hours after meals. Doesn't matter if the meal was high protein, higher fat. I feel fairly satiated at the table, but within a couple of hours, I feel hungry. I try not to snack, but I struggle making it another couple hours to lunch. Any suggestions? Hey, Catherine, tell me what an average meal looks like for you. Like literally like 4 eggs, 2 ounces of cheese, 8 ounces of steak, whatever. Like give me some average meals. I probably better answer your question then. Tammy says, I think Dave Feldman just posted a new info about LDL on YouTube. Okay, so look on YouTube for Dave if you want more LDL questions answered. Docs and Gal says, my weight loss following keto has been mostly fat, but I was very weak before weight loss. I have your past problem. I don't want to exercise. I need to get exercise motivated. What finally clicked with you to exercise? Okay. I mean, there's a couple of things. One, okay, I'll be honest. My mom is, she's about to turn 80, and I see her physical struggles. I see the way that her body is breaking down. And I don't want that. I don't want it. I don't want to be experiencing those things. Now, some of it you can't avoid. I understand bodies are going to body. And I'm not in any way blaming her for what she's experiencing. However, I see things that I could do now that will make it less likely that I will suffer as much as she is suffering. And I want to do everything I can to be a healthy 80-year-old who is not in constant pain. And that honestly was the thing. that finally got my ass moving. Because apparently, this is true of my whole journey. For decades, when I just thought I would like to look better, I didn't lose the weight. But one day I just kind of woke up and was like, I'm going to die much sooner than I want to. And I changed. And now it was like, oh, I'm going to fall apart. And I can already tell I'm not as strong as I need to be now. So how's that going to go when I get older? And it scared me. And so apparently fear is my primary motivator. So I got scared and I was like, okay, that's it. I got to do this. So that's what finally got me moving. That's it. Also, I felt a bit like a hypocrite being on the internet, talking about good health, being a health coach, and not doing more to be healthy. Diet is not enough. Health is not diet. Now, if your diet is bad, your health will be bad, period. But if your diet is good, your health still might not be as good as it should be, because health is not just diet. It's certainly a huge boulder in your health plan, but not the only one. Colleen, how do I like my Creami? I love my Creami. So anyone, I did not do I am a terrible business person. I did not do Amazon Prime Day. I did not put links out. But if you can find a deal on a Creami, you should get one. We love it. My boyfriend, he is an ice cream eater. Our whole relationship, he eats ice cream. I've known him for like close to 30 years now. And he eats, 30. I think it might be 30. Anyway, very close to 30, if not 30. And he eat ice cream every day. Now, when he was younger, he ate this much ice cream every day. Literally, we had these big pint glasses, like bigger than one of those giant plastic tumblers. It would make like a milkshake. He'd fill it most of the way with ice cream and then add milk to it and mix it up. And then he would eat that. It was just this tumbler of ice cream. Now he eats a smaller amount. It's like a little cup. He puts it in like a teacup. But every night, ice cream. And since we got the Creami, he's not overweight, by the way. He's very fit. But when we got the Creami, he stopped eating the ice cream and started eating the Creami stuff. So there you go. So basically, we put mostly yogurt in the Creami. So I use like Too Good yogurt. My favorite 2 Creami recipes are one lemon Too Good, which is kind of hard to find, but you can find it sometimes, or 1 lemon yogurt. Like these are the 6-ounce containers. And then 2 strawberry Too Goods. And then I think 2, it might be 1. Anyway, strawberry and lemon Too Goods with a few fresh strawberries. And then I pour in some sugar-free lemonade. And then you freeze that and I blitz that up. And then I do a couple of fresh strawberries as a mix-in. And then that's like it's like strawberry lemonade iced soft serve. So good. And then my other favorite, again, this one might be a little higher carb for some of you, but it's not high carb. I do cherry Too Good yogurts, 2 of them, and 1 lime yogurt. I think I have to use a different brand, but a lime yogurt. And then I put in a few cherries. It's cherry season right now. Not a requirement, but it's really good with a few cherries, just a few. And then I blitz that up and I throw some cherries in for the mix in. So those are my 2 favorite. I would eat those all the time. Love those. But Eric really likes peach flavored ones. So he's been doing peach ones. And I've tried coffee. So for those of you that don't have a Creami is a Ninja Creami, Creami. So if you've heard of the brand Ninja, they make blenders and food processors and air fryers. The Creami is a machine that turns, it's not very good with high fat desserts. It makes butter with high fat desserts, but you take lower fat things like yogurt or fruit and other milks, and you freeze them, and then you put it in the machine and it turns them into ice cream. I think it makes frozen yogurt more than ice cream, because Eric's my boyfriend. Eric and I tried one with heavy cream And literally it was like eating butter, like it churned it almost. And it was unpleasant. So, but if you use high fat yogurts, those work great. So it doesn't have to be low fat, but full fat cream as the primary liquid is too much. So anyway, but we love it. The Ninja Creami. That is my favorite purchase of this century. All right. It's like around $200. But totally worth it. All right. Catherine says 2 eggs, 3 strips of bacon after a couple of heavy whipping cream coffees and some butter. Catherine, I would say that seems like a fairly low protein thing. So you're saying whether it's high protein or low protein. I would say, like, I can tell you that this morning I had, well, I don't know how many eggs because I used liquid egg whites, but I had a giant plate of egg whites and eggs. So what would that be to do the translation? It was about 6 ounces of egg whites. I think that's like the equivalent of like 10 egg whites, I think. It was a lot and then 1 whole egg. The yolk has a lot of good nutrition in it and some mushrooms. I had that for breakfast. So I would add I would have the 2 eggs, the 3 strips of bacon, and I would add to that like 4 or 5 more egg whites, maybe 5 or 6, and maybe a little less cream or butter maybe to offset. But but you could do, it doesn't sound crazy what you're doing, depending on, I don't know how much heavy cream you're putting in your coffee. But here you said, sorry, I see you again. It could be higher protein, like 1 cup of skyr protein, sparing modified bread with a half tablespoon of butter, 3 links chicken breakfast sausage. That seems more. So either one of those, you're hungry. I would just say push the protein, a little more protein, a little more fat. Because like that skyr, that breakfast, I'm going to say is like, okay, that's like 100, 200, 300. That's like a 400 calorie breakfast. The other one is like 50, 100, 200. Yeah, I mean, each of them are like 300 to 400 calorie breakfasts. One is higher in protein, one is higher in fat. Maybe one is more like 5, one is more like 4. But still, maybe try eating more and seeing if where does it end? Is there a meal amount of food that you feel full at? Go do some experimentation. Maybe you're like, hey, when I eat, I don't know, 2 cups of skyr, 3 slices of protein bread, 4 sausage links, I'm like, okay, now I'm good for 4 or 5 hours. And then maybe you eat 2 meals a day, 2 big meals a day instead of 3 smaller meals a day, finding that balance. Karen asked about cortisol and belly fat. Cortisol drives belly fat. I know that's not helpful, right? You're probably asking how to fix cortisol and belly fat. The first thing is, I would say, there are things we can do to lower our cortisol levels. Meditation, massage, walks, mindfulness, things that kind of bring our concentration in, bring our anxiety level down, and focusing on including more of those things in our day can be very helpful. I'm out of liquid. All right. I have liquid in the coffee. I'm a 2 vessel person. All right. Melinda says, I look like I've lost weight. Thank you. I appreciate that. I have at various times. So I don't know when you last saw me. Julie says, that's a good point. Julie mentioned to have done keto chow in the Creami. The Creami is great for keto chow. You just make a keto chow according to the recipe and freeze it and then put it in the Creami and it comes out like yogurt. It's fabulous. So yeah, you can use protein drinks. David said, good demonstration of metabolic adaptability. Are you talking about the boyfriend? Yeah, he is metabolically flexible. All right, let's see. Yeah, Larry says triple the bacon and double the eggs. Yeah, try eating more would be the thing I would try. Tammy says a Quest caramel pre-made protein drink with a quarter cup of heavy cream and cocoa powder is awesome in the Creami. Yeah, the other day I did a Quest protein shake and coffee and a little sweetener, and that was amazing. It was like my morning coffee, but in a ice cream form. So yeah, definitely lots of things you can do with a Creami. Um, let's see. Tammy says, do you include balance exercise? I hear balance and core strength is most important in later years. Yeah, I need to include more balance. There does seem to be a huge component to long-term health with balance. And it's actually not just the balance part of it, if that makes sense. So balance helps you not fall, which definitely is a benefit as we're aging. Um, but the other part of that is when you do balance work, it challenges you mentally, right? You're having eye coordination, your brain gets more involved in the exercise. And when you engage your brain while you're exercising, apparently that leads to huge cognitive aging benefits. So it's all a part of it. But yeah, so balance work is important. I'm here. My balance is awful. It has been my whole life. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean you have to get good at things. You just have to get better at them than you used to be. So that's good news because I have lots of room to grow in terms of many of these things. So yeah, balance is very important as we age. Also, eccentric motion. So when we pick things up, that's concentric. So like if I don't have a weight here, I have a jar. So if this was a weight, right? I mean, it is weight, but if so as this is coming up, that's concentric. As it's going down, that's eccentric. Okay. As we're resisting. So you can think as you're lowering a weight, you're resisting against the weight, right? That eccentric motion. So as we age, we retain our concentric strength much better than our eccentric strength. And when they study this, maintenance of the eccentric, right? So concentric, eccentric. The eccentric is especially important to safe and healthy aging, but it's the thing that breaks down the fastest. And that's because if you think about coming down the stairs as an example, as you're walking down a hill or coming down the stairs, it taxes your eccentric muscle more than going up the stairs is concentric. And what happens is the muscle can often fail on the way down, right? So the muscle is attached to the tendon, which is attached to the bone. And as you think about it, I don't want to say this. You can't. So pretend this is my knee joint. It's like I can't show you my knee, but so when our knee is stacked, right? Our lower leg is stacked with our upper leg. That's a very strong position. But as soon as that breaks, as soon as we bend the knee, that column of strength is destabilized. And as we are going down, we break at the knee, that loosens the tension. We no longer have the stability of the stack. And then we need to rely on the muscle to hold us as we go down, as we take that step down. And that is where older people fall. So if you don't maintain eccentric strength, you are become a fall risk at all times. And so that's why working that muscle on the eccentric can become essential as we're getting older, because that will help us hold our body tight as we step down or walk down, that we can resist the gravity better and age better. Let's see. Trying to see where I was. David says, from a previous live stream, you mentioned the Herman Ponzer. My dad's name is Herman too, by the way. Goes by Herm though. Herman Ponzer and his study of the Hadza. I found the study very interesting. That was the demonstration of metabolic flexibility. Got it. Joni, which calculator do you recommend on Chronometer? I don't actually recommend any of the calculators on Chronometer. I recommend Chronometer as a tracking app, but I recommend you calculate your own macros. How do I recommend you calculate your own macros? I'm doing a video on that, but let me tell you now, right? This is you guys can ask me questions. So the minimal protein intake, I would say that I am happy with is 0.8 grams per pound of reference body weight. That's sort of the minimal. You could argue 0.7 is okay. I like 0.8. Just it gives you a little bit of a rounding up for error. Now, is that the most you can get? No, that's the minimum. So, and it's based on reference body weight. So take your, what am I saying? Take your goal weight or your reference body weight. You just have to be in the neighborhood. So what you think you should weigh. And so let's say that's 150 pounds. Then I'm going to multiply that by 0.8. So that would be 120 grams that would be 120 grams of protein. Now that's as a minimum. I like 1 gram per pound. So that's 150 grams. So in my mind, you as a 150 pound goal weight person could eat anywhere from 120 to 150 grams of protein. You decide if you do better on the higher end or the lower end or somewhere in the middle. As an example, if I'm trying to maintain my weight, then hold on, I'm making a note. If I try to maintain my weight, I can get away with the lower end, but I'm hungrier when I'm trying to lose weight and I'm eating less calories overall. So I would aim for the higher end, right? So it can vary depending on the condition you're in. And then in terms of how much fat and protein, how much fat and carbohydrates. Well, carbohydrates are going to be based on your metabolic situation. If you're trying to be keto, you got to keep the carbs low enough that you're going to be in ketosis. So for people, that's somewhere between 20 and 50 grams, depending on how athletic you are, all that kind of stuff. So then you're going to set your carbs based on that. And then the amount of fat that you eat is going to depend on what your needs are. Are you trying to lose body fat, gain body fat, maintain body fat? You're going to adjust the fat level there. And so the way I usually recommend doing that is eating at maintenance. So eating enough food that you're going to be maintaining your weight. And then from there, coming up with, okay, how many calories is that? Do that over a couple of weeks. Yeah, this many calories I maintain my weight at. And then now you've got your maintenance caloric level. And if you're trying to lose body fat, you're going to need to eat less than that. So I usually set my protein and carbs for all times, and then I adjust the fat down or up if I'm trying to maintain or lose. And so that's how you do that. And then you put those numbers in Chronometer and you're off on your merry way. Docs and Gal says, I have been trying to incorporate the teeny habit thing, balancing on one leg, brushing your teeth. Yep. Last night I was cooking while balancing on one leg. Tammy mentions exercise and water might be great for that kind of strength. Actually, it's not, unfortunately, because when you're in water, it keeps you buoyant. Although you can press against it. I think it would be harder. I could be wrong. Anyway, I would think that'd be hard. Debbie mentions walking backwards is good for the brain-body connection. Totally. Anything complicated or hard is good. Terry reminds you to click the like button. I always forget. Subscribe and like. By the way, this goes out to both Facebook and YouTube. If you're on YouTube, if you could like and subscribe, that'd be great. If you could like on Facebook. There's also something called Super Thanks or Super Chat on both, where you can send me some money just to say I like you. And that would be awesome if you'd like to. So there you go. What else? All right. I feel like we've covered some things here today. What else is going on? Oh, I saw a comment, but it doesn't have a comment in it. I don't know what that means. That was a lot of talking. All right. So what else should we talk about? Probably it's coming up in the world. It is July still. I just started Keto Unstuck. It's great. I really enjoy that program. Then we're going to be into August. And in August, I'm going to be at Keto Summit Orlando in Orlando, Florida. It's going to be hot. in August in Orlando, I imagine. But that's the way it goes. So Keto Summit Orlando, I will be there with some awesome people. So if you're in Florida or the Orlando area, I hope to see you there. And then in September, I'll be at an event in Tennessee, and we'll see what else. So I've got those things coming up. And that's kind of what it is. I have to find out if my hairdresser is going to be in town between now and then, because it's getting a little long. I really like long hair, but long hair does not work for me. It's too thin. My hair is too thin to go long. It starts to look real stringy. Dave, Tennessee, I will be at the Berries event in Nashville. And maybe I'll do a meet and greet, something in Tennessee otherwise. So we'll see. Abigail, speaking of hair, I'm losing my hair and getting thin. Any ideas what I can do? So a couple of things will lead to hair loss. The first of which is, gosh, I'm going to say this wrong. It sounds like a Harry Potter spell, but like I think it's called telogen effluvium, which basically means that if you stress your body out in any major way, you have a baby, you lose a ton of weight, you get sick, there's a famine, you'll lose hair, because your hair is not essential for your survival. And if any of these stressful things happen, our body is like, it's like a fire cell. They're like, what can go? Hair. We don't need the hair. Let's keep this person alive. And so if you've lost a lot of weight recently, it is pretty natural that about 3 months after that, your hair is falling out. And that'll just resolve itself. When you stop losing weight, your body will say, hey, we got some extra energy again. We're going to put it into the hair. But otherwise, if it's not that, not eating enough protein is a primary reason for hair loss. So make sure you're getting plenty of protein. Make sure your vitamin and mineral levels are appropriate, and make sure your thyroid is healthy. So all of those things, iron level, vitamin D, B vitamins, protein ingestion in general, those are all going to be pretty vital to maintaining a healthy head of hair. Hey, Miriam, it's good to see you. I love Miriam. You guys, if you don't know, Miriam, we talked earlier about keto chow going very well into the Creami, which I'm currently in love with. Kathy said, my pulse is usually 87. I tried to give blood yesterday. Pulse was 107 and I couldn't donate. What is the cause of this? My guess is stress. If you're under a lot of stress, your pulse rate will be high. If your pulse rate is consistently high, I would see your doctor. Cindy said, any thoughts about having difficulty sleeping when fasting? I would say sleep is more important than fasting, and it's not uncommon to have problems sleeping when fasting. So problems sleeping would indicate to me that you probably need to stop fasting, or at least cut back on the fasting so that you can sleep. Not sleeping well is one of the worst things we can do for fat loss, one of the worst things we can do for our health, one of the worst things we can do for insulin resistance. So if your fasting is impacting your sleep, you will metabolically be better off sleeping than fasting. So I would work on that. All right. That feels like a good show. We're going to end here. I will be back next week, and I enjoy this time with you. So thank you for joining me. Hit the like and subscribe, and I'll see you next week. All right. Bye, guys.